I never thought a garden could almost cost me my home. One morning I found a letter taped to my door, $500 in fines, threats of legal action, and a warning that if I didn't comply, the HOA could move to seize my house. All because of a row of roses I planted for my daughter. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about flowers. It was about control, and the woman who ran our neighborhood, Linda Dawson, was determined to break me. When I moved into Maplewood Estates, I thought I was buying peace of mind. Safe streets, good schools, neighbors who waved when you drove by. I work in software quiet life, married with a little girl. We wanted stability. What we got was a tyrant in pearls. Linda was the president of the HOA, the self-proclaimed guardian of community standards. She had that fixed smile, the kind that looks polite until you notice the judgment in her eyes. The first letter came about the roses, claiming they didn't match the approved color palette. The second warned me that my garbage can was visible from the sidewalk. The third demanded I replace my curtains with a shade of beige she said was uniform. It felt like I had a parole officer, not a neighbor. I tried to be reasonable. I pulled the trash bin back, swapped some flowers, even read through the HOA handbook like it was the Bible. But no matter what I did, another warning came. Linda showed up at my door, once arms crossed, voice sharp as a knife. "You need to understand, Michael. We don't tolerate rule breakers here. Don't test me." I laughed it off, at first told my wife Sarah we'd just play along. But every week the pressure grew heavier. I started dreading the walk to the mailbox. Sure, I'd find another fine. My daughter overheard us whispering late at night, and one evening she asked Daddy, "Are we going to lose our house?" My heart cracked right there. That was when the doubt sank in. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should just cave, change everything, stop resisting. Maybe this was the price of living in a nice neighborhood. I remember sitting in the dark, staring at those letters, spread out like evidence of a crime, wondering if Linda was right about me. Maybe I didn't belong. For a moment I wanted to give up, swallow the humiliation, and let her win. But then came a knock on my door that changed everything. It was David Miller, my neighbor 2 houses down. Retired lawyer, quiet guy who kept to himself. He handed me a folder thick with papers. "You're not the only one," he said. Inside were meeting minutes, financial reports, copies of the HOA handbook. I flipped through them and my pulse quickened. The rules Linda was citing weren't in the original handbook. She had printed her own version, changed clauses without any community vote. There were fines collected with no record of where the money went. David wasn't alone either. He introduced me to the Walshes across the street, another family slapped with fines for painting their shutters too glossy. Others joined in their stories, piling up like bricks. What we thought were personal grudges were actually patterns, abuse, intimidation, outright lies. Linda wasn't enforcing rules. She was making them up. That night, something snapped inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I wasn't alone. I decided if Linda wanted a fight, she was going to get one. We gathered evidence, photos, letters, witness statements. David drafted a complaint to the city's Community Affairs Office, and I prepared for the showdown. The HOA called a special meeting that month. I walked into the clubhouse and felt every eye on me. Linda sat at the front table, pearls gleaming, her lips curled in that patronizing smile. "Michael Carter," she began, "you've been a constant disruption to this community. Perhaps you'd like to explain yourself before we proceed with further action." My hands trembled, but I stood tall. I laid the documents on the table, page after page of discrepancies. "These rules you've been citing, they were never approved. These fines, they were never accounted for. You've been abusing your position, Linda." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She tried to laugh it off, waving her hand. "That's nonsense. Baseless accusations." Then David stepped forward, voice steady as a gavel. "As former counsel for homeowners associations in this state, I can confirm what Michael is saying. None of these amendments are valid. What's more, funds have been misappropriated. That's grounds for removal." Neighbors began speaking up, voices overlapping, stories pouring out, threats, fines, harassment. A woman stood and shouted, "You threatened to tow my car for parking in my own driveway." Another man slammed down a letter of his own. The room shifted like a tide turning. Linda's face lost its color. She raised her voice demanding order, but the crowd no longer obeyed. Finally, someone called for a vote. Hands shot up all around me. Even one of Linda's supposed allies raised his, declaring he'd had enough of her lies. In that moment, the empire she built on fear collapsed. The motion passed. Linda Dawson was officially removed as president of the HOA. She stood frozen, fists clenched, sputtering about conspiracies about how we'd regret this. Security escorted her out as the room echoed with murmurs of relief. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my chest. My daughter's question rang in my ears. Are we going to lose our house? And I knew the answer was no. Not now. Not ever. Linda tried to glare at me one last time as she left, but it didn't matter. Her power was gone. She was nothing more than a neighbor with too much time on her hands. The community had seen her for what she really was. And me, I learned something that night. Bullies thrive when you're silent. The moment you stand up, the moment you find your voice, their power crumbles. Because sometimes the only way to deal with a tyrant is to remind them they don't rule you.